Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media.
Welcome home to the native. Landing on a podcast space destined for greatness. 60 minutes or so hit, not too long for the grave shit. High level combo, politics in a way that you can taste it, then digest it. Politics touches you even if you don't touch it, so get invested. Cross the T's and dot the I's. Gillum back to get 'em. Stand on business with Rye. You could have been anywhere, but you chose us. Native Land Podcast, the brand that you can trust. Yes.
Welcome home, you guys. It's episode 26 of Native Land Pod. I am your host, Tiffany Cross. So here with my co-hosts, Andrew Gillum and Angela Rye. And right here, we give it to you like that Crown Royale, straight no chaser. What's going on, you guys? It's been a day already.
Or some milk.
It's
Warm.
been a
all the challenges, the difficulties. So just so y'all know, we've had a lot of technical difficulties today getting
I think
started.
it's Trump.
It ain't nothing but the devil.
Something.
It equals Trump. The devil.
I mean, it can be, but he not over here. I think the devil don't want us to get this truth to y'all today, but we shall not be moved.
There it is.
That's got to be what it is. That's got to be what
Planted
it is.
by the water here.
Well, we better get into it before something else happens. We didn't have Wi-Fi issues, audio issues, video issues, so.
But we still standing, y'all. We still standing.
Thank God it
fall
ain't
down.
But we
get up.
All right, Nick, we fell down. Go and get us on up and drop that beat. All right, you guys.
Okay.
So we have a lot to get into. First of all, I know y'all wanted to hear from us after the debate, but just our recording schedule, we dropped the day that the debate happened. And so unfortunately, you did not get to hear from us. But we're going to get into the fallout from that, which I think is way more important on this episode. So, Angela, I know because we were in group chats and talking about it, this Trump immunity case.
Yes. Here's the thing. We all knew that this was going to be one of these things that was going to happen. But that's what happens when you have insurrectionists on the Supreme Court. So we will talk about the Supreme Court ruling, the opinion that was just brought down yesterday. We're recording a day early this week. And we will talk about my favorite part as well, the dissenters, because sometimes it's the dissenters who preserve the union. So we'll talk about that. I'm looking forward to get into this discussion, although I'm not excited about what the ruling was at all.
No, none of us were.
Andrew, what you bringing?
Yeah, I mean, in follow-up to this court's ruling, I think the stakes of this presidential, U.S. Senate, congressional, you list the offices, and we can talk about its importance. I believe they've shifted. And I'd love to sort of get into, yes, there was the debate. Yes, there was the poor performance. But yes, there is a presidential election at stake, and the stakes couldn't be much higher. We'll get into that.
All right, before we get into the show, I'm going to throw it back because I got to disappoint you guys. There are no sports in the show this week. So I got 3 throwbacks for you that are all sports. Yeah. It's good. So July 6th, 1957, Althea Gibson became the first Black woman to win Wimbledon. July 5th, 1975, Arthur Ashe became the first Black man to win Wimbledon. And July 6th, 2002, Serena Williams defeated Venus to win her first Wimbledon singles title. I haven't given y'all my tennis knowledge, so there you go.
I appreciate that, friend.
That's our little art. You know, I just want to bring the people to sports because everybody, no matter how you feel about anything, everybody likes sports, like me. Anywho, I wanted to get into that too because now we must press you with America, the beautiful America, the ghetto.
Hello, Andrew. Hello, Tiffany. And hello, Angela. My name is Jason Bowman. I am from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Love Native Land Podcast, and I'm hoping that you guys can answer my question because I'm sure, like most Americans, we are confused over the Supreme Court's ruling in regards to the January 6th insurrection. So here goes. So I am confused because I would love to know what exactly does the Supreme Court mean? Do they mean that Donald Trump has immunity over his behavior that basically excited the riot to happen on January 6th? Does this mean that he was on official president duty while sitting in lame duck status? Does this mean that he's immune from all charges? What exactly does this mean? And from my understanding, I assumed that when the president was taking office that they were under oath to protect the Constitution. everything that he did on January 6th did not protect the Constitution. So I'm just confused. What message does this send to future presidents of this nation?
Apparently, the Supreme Court is still bought and sold, and apparently Justice Clarence Thomas is still dropping it like it's hot, and the bar couldn't be lower. So
come on,
we have the Supreme Court, which talked about Donald Trump having immunity. We have absolute immunity, which was on the table, and presumptive immunity, which was on the table. Before this particular ruling, this court, is John Roberts, Justice Roberts, starts this decision saying that they've never had to consider criminal immunity for a president before. And that's what was at stake in this particular case. The most critical line in the opinion is this. This case is the first criminal prosecution in our nation's history of a former president for actions taken during his presidency. Now, you would think with a line like that they are going to side with morality, that they are going to side with a president having to be above reproach, kind of like a bishop in the Bible, right? That's not what happens here. They instead say that there is no immunity for unofficial acts. Great, right? You meet us where we are. There's no immunity for our official or unofficial acts, but that there is absolute immunity from criminal prosecution for actions within his conclusive and preclusive constitutional authority. We'll talk about that. And he is entitled to at least presumptive immunity from prosecution for all his official acts. That's a lot of word salad, but here's the bottom line. Donald Trump, if he takes any number of actions, is not going to be criminally prosecuted, should not be as the office of the president. And many of you have asked, well, this applies to Donald Trump. How does it apply to Joe Biden? I just want to give you this one observation. Joe Biden was they were considering trying Joe Biden for a violation of handling classified documents. In that particular case, special prosecutor Richard Hur says he's too old to be tried on this matter. There should be no criminal liability. Well, now under this case doctrine, he couldn't be because he's the president, and it was while he was officially in office. Maybe they could argue because he was a vice president at the time, right? That he didn't do anything, that he could actually be liable. It is interesting to see how this philosophy will come to pass with other officials in a president's cabinet. But the thing that's most interesting to me at this point, y'all, and we can get more into the weeds of this, but I want us to have a conversation, not just a lecture. But the thing that I think is interesting about this particular case as well is Donald Trump, and this is what we've been talking about on this podcast, kind of litigating on this podcast, is Donald Trump using this immunity to say, therefore, I should not be convicted or sentenced on these other counts. There, as we know, there are 88 indictments against Donald Trump, 88 counts. 34 he was found guilty of in a New York court. He used this case from yesterday, this holding in this case, and said, I should not be criminally prosecuted. I should have never been convicted, and I certainly shouldn't be sentenced in this New York case because this should apply even in state matters. Well, the verdict, the sentencing is now postponed by 2 weeks. We were supposed to get lucky on 7/11, not anymore. And now he's saying that this should apply. Here's the problem. Donald Trump was not a sitting president when this happened. Donald Trump was running for office. That is not an official act. So I'm interested to see what this judge does. It makes me nervous that he's postponed this, but I want y'all to weigh in because it's a lot of things, and I want to get into some of the what ifs and ask y'all my poll questions because y'all know we're a polling firm now.
Well, one, thank you for helping to break that down for us, Angela. And on the last point with regard to the New York case, he did sign a number of the checks while in the White House. And apparently, in the trial, there was evidence allowed to be viewed by the jury of public statements, public tweets that were administered by the president from the White House. And it is now their contention that because that now protected and privileged information was allowed to be shown to the jury, and some might say possibly reasonably calculated in their verdict, that the entire verdict, all 34 counts, ought to be vacated. In fact, the first chilling effect that occurred yesterday was the U.S. Department of Justice in New York was supposed to submit their recommendations to the judge privately, to the judge around what he should be facing vis-a-vis sentencing. They did not submit that document to the judge yesterday.
The New York State's attorney.
Correct.
So not DOJ.
No, well, the United States Department of Justice, Southern District, was supposed to submit recommendations. I'm sorry. You're right. I apologize, Angela.
It's Alvin Bragg's office.
Alvin Bragg's office.
Yeah.
And they did not submit those recommendations to the judge yesterday when they were due. Then, as a result, the Alvin Bragg's office said we would be in favor of delaying the sentencing by 2 weeks.
Right.
And the judge, of course, has complied. But Angela, one of the so shocking decision in the sense that not only did they get it is, because it is one thing to give Donald Trump what he asked for. They went way above and beyond the simple parameters of what Donald Trump asked for. In fact, in one of the most extreme ways, while they said a former president can be prosecuted for actions he's taken that are of a personal nature, it precludes being shown as submitted as evidence any discussions, conversations, planning, his method, his thinking of those actions taken while he was president. They preclude a jury from being able to have access to any of that information for fear that it may chill the bold actions of a president from doing, saying, and acting as a bold president should. It confused me because there was never, ever, ever an argument that presidents are not bold and haven't been bold prior to Donald Trump because of fear of prosecution. I've never heard that before. In fact, we've seen very activist and strong demonstrations of individuals in the presidency. In fact, the court said that the reason why we have to go so far to protect this president and give him immunity, so that this decision, which is for the ages, doesn't cause us to have presidents who are trepidatious about making the kinds of decisions that they must make while in office. Yeah. But that assumption, that statement by the Chief Justice, assumes that presidents prior to Donald Trump but were under the suspicion that they could never be prosecuted. And that can't be right. Let's just look at the case of Lyndon B. Johnson and Ford. Why would Ford have pardoned why would Ford have pardoned Nixon if Nixon didn't have a fear?
I was saying yes to, but not Lyndon B. Johnson. You're right. It's definitely Richard Nixon.
But why would he have issued a pardon to Nixon if there was not a reasonable fear that a president could be prosecuted for actions that they took in office?
Of course. And I think when I was even pushing back, and Tiff, I'd love for you to weigh in here, when I was pushing back on that it was shocking, I think that there was a part of us that kind of knew this was going to happen. We saw, just based on what this Supreme Court is ruling around reproductive justice, what they've ruled around homelessness, what they ruled in Chevron, what they ruled around assault weapons. I mean, we can keep going. I don't know that we were really shocked. And then, of course, January 6th itself, just last week. So I don't know that we were super shocked because of the makeup of this court, not because this is what this court would do. So, Tiff, I want you to weigh in here, and then I have some, I got some focus group questions for y'all.
Well, I have to say, it's so frustrating when I have consumed some of the media around this in both print and broadcast, because I do think people are so into the weeds that for people out there who wonder, why do I care about this? This seems like, 1,000 miles away from me. This is why you should care. Essentially, the court, there is no appeal. The Supreme Court is the highest court of the land. And they have essentially given the office of the president free reign to do whatever they like. So Donald Trump, were he to win another election, could have a political rival assassinated. Donald Trump, were he to win re-election, could use that office to enrich his pockets, which he did the first term. I believe Jared and Ivanka made $80 million the first year he was in office, and it continued to grow. Let's not forget that this is a man who had Kislyak. a Russian operative in the Oval Office. What would stop him? Now, one thing that one of the attorneys argued, who was arguing on Donald Trump's behalf, a question that he posed, which I thought was legitimate. If we are going to allow presidents to be prosecuted, let's say a president has to make the call to have a foreign adversary taken out. Could he then later be subjected to criminal charges? And I thought, well, that is a legitimate question. Now that they've essentially said you can do whatever you want in office, that should give everyone chills. Because imagine what an unhinged, politically inept person whose first job in government was president of the United States. Imagine what he might do with the second term.
Well, and you're right. A second term.
We haven't seen.
No, I agree. The second term we haven't seen.
Andrew, 1 second.
You're right.
1 second. I was just going to say 1 second on this. I want to roll Ketanji Brown Jackson's sound from when they heard the oral arguments in April, because she raises some of the very points and questions, or you made them statements as declarations, Tiff. She raises them as questions to Trump's lawyer. Let's roll that sound.
I'm trying to understand what the disincentive is from turning the Oval Office into, the seat of criminal activity in this country.
I don't think there's any allegation of that in this case. And what George Washington said is, what Benjamin Franklin said is, we view the prosecution of a chief executive as something that everybody cried out against as unconstitutional. And what George Washington said is, we're worried about factional strife, which will.
No, let me put this worry on the table. If the potential for criminal liability is taken off the table, wouldn't there be a significant risk that future presidents would be emboldened to commit crimes with abandon while they're in office? It's right now the fact that we're having this debate because OLC has said that presidents might be prosecuted. Presidents from the beginning of time have understood that that's a possibility. That might be what has kept this office from turning into the kind of crime center that I'm envisioning. But once we say no criminal liability, Mr. President, you can do whatever you want, I'm worried that we would have a worse problem than the problem of the president feeling constrained to follow the law while he's in office.
So yeah, I wanted to play that clip because, as Tiff said, we are very much in the weeds on this. It is important for me to try to lay out how many layers and how detailed they were and meticulous they were about showing all of the ways that Trump is protected in this role. When we learn civics, and this is the danger of taking textbooks out of schools, we learn that the legislative branch makes laws, that the judicial branch interprets or evaluates laws, and that the executive branch carries out the laws. What they're saying now is that the executive branch will make the law, will break the law, will take the law, and will do as they see fit with the law. That's the point. And I think when we look at those pieces, that is very, very scary. This isn't about what Donald Trump will do in office. This is about what anybody elected to the highest office of the land can do. And Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson was absolutely right. There are people who would have never considered running for office, Tiffany and Andrew, who now will consider it because they see it as a way to get away with all of the things that they never could potentially, unless they're, a CEO of a big company. Some of those folks have been running circles and running game for a long time, a la Enron. But I think that we have to really consider what all this means. Now you have a court not just turning a blind eye, but putting pen to paper to say these are the things you can do. That even, and this was the part that was scary for me too. I don't know if you all saw this, but they talked about the outer perimeter of official responsibilities, and that outer perimeter, it still covers your actions as long as they are not manifestly or palpably beyond his authority. But they go on to say all these things that are beyond authority. Clarence Thomas went into talking about how, even the role of a special prosecutor should not be a thing.
What does that mean, the outer perimeter? Like when you say it? Because I imagine a lot of people.
I don't know either. But Tiff, what I'm saying is what it looks like they were doing is like, here are these things that are your official responsibilities. Here are these things that are like kind of related to your official responsibilities. And even if it looks like you were signing the checks for the hush money, even though you already made some payments in the 2016 campaign, that's what I was going to say earlier, Andrew. But if you sign the checks because you were sitting in the taxpayer paid chair in the Oval Office, that is the outer perimeter of your official responsibility because you were signing them while engaging in the course of other activity. They didn't use that example specifically, but I could see that saying it's not manifestly or palpably beyond his authority because if he were convicted of this, it could be frowned upon and looked bad upon by the rest of the world leaders, or it could look bad for the country. So because it would look bad for the country, we should allow this in as an official activity or outer perimeter activity.
Angela, I don't think they were opaque about that. I think they were very clear, which is even if it is an act that is non-presidential, outside of your duties and responsibilities, nothing, you can't get any evidence gathered from while you were president in support of you having broken the law. So they've made it, they've handicapped, they say he can be accountable, but then they handicap his responsibility. And I just want to cite a few examples. One, the Department of Justice, which we all previously thought was the chief attorney on behalf of the United States. The court was explicit. In fact, they said all charges regarding his conversations and his directions given to the attorney general to take certain actions like a letter saying we need to investigate your state and send fake electors or send a whole nother slate, which Donald Trump asked the acting attorney general to do, and he refused to do it and said he would resign. The U.S. Supreme Court said it is not permissible for you to account that as a charge against the president because the Department of Justice is his. The Department of Justice and the Attorney General
remove his AG.
Reports to him, and the president can give direction, have conversation with the Attorney General as well about active investigations, direct who he should investigate, direct who they can bring charges against. All of this they have cloaked in the universal unitary executive, Donald Trump, or whomever else may come after him. The president can also take a bribe for pardoning somebody. Pardon power is exclusively in the jurisdiction of the President of the United States, which means it is a core function, constitutional function, and anything that he does regarding pardons cannot be questioned and he cannot be prosecuted. So if you went to him with $1 million and say, I give you $1 million if you give me a pardon, that cannot be prosecuted in office, out of office, no day of the week.
That's absolute immunity too. So pardoning, if he does anything associated with pardon, that's absolute immunity. Anything associated with any member of his cabinet that he wants to remove because he's trying to break the law, absolute immunity. But there's presumptive immunity for pressuring Mike Pence to reject the state's electoral votes or send them back to state legislatures. So I don't understand. They're saying that because it's an official act, but it's not associated specifically with his constitutional powers, that is presumptive. It is presumed that he would be immune from this, but absolute for anything that is written in and enshrined in the Constitution. So, I want to ask you all, based on what you've seen from this Supreme Court, if you think they will try to expand this doctrine to qualified immunity. Where that, of course, has been in debate and in hot contention around law enforcement and police in this country. Do you think that they will try to extend this doctrine to police officers who are pursuing qualified immunity for shooting, killing, injuring a citizen?
And just to explain to the listeners, qualified immunity is basically you're shielded from
your actions that you take in your capacity as a law enforcement officer.
From being civilly sued. So any civil liability. And in some instances, it is extended to criminal liability.
Sure. No, they operate, in my state, at least under the cloak of immunity from prosecution through anything that they do in the course of their work as a law enforcement officer. Civil, criminal. But I honestly tell you, Angela, I wish I could even get to that concern. I mean, in so many ways, it's already been extended, if not in black and white, certainly in practice. Remember, our friend Marilyn Mosby, one of the very first, if not the first prosecutor to take these law enforcement officers on. And that's not because they've never done anything wrong before. It's because the norms of society say that you can't, that it's beyond the pale. You can't pursue them in that way. But honestly,
This is in writing as the law now, though. So I'm wondering if this is now going to be extended. Like, you cannot, right? So that's what I'm curious about. Like, if we, and I know we got to take a break. But I want to know, do we think it's going to be extended to cabinets? Do we think it'll be extended to mayors and governors? Do we think this would be extended to other people on the federal level? But do we think that this same letter of the law, interpretation of the law, and really the making of a brand new law will be extended to other folks who are acting on behalf of the government in these roles? Or is it only going to be the president?
No, I think that the court has already proven that they know no bounds with the egregiousness of some of these decisions that they issue. I would say, though, specifically to your question around qualified immunity as it relates to officers, my understanding is that would only extend to federal officers, which is why we always talk about the First Step Act needs a second step and a third step. I think in terms of shielding law enforcement officers who are not federal police, that would have to happen at the local level, like
local
you
and
know,
state,
like the state, right?
Yeah,
the state Supreme Court would have to. But I think the question you're raising is a legitimate point. I understand your question. I'm making a different point in that if that has to happen at the state Supreme Court level, and that is also a potential challenge, because while we pay so much attention to the Supreme Court, before something makes it to the Supreme Court, they've gone through the lower courts first. So it's even I think, a reason to pay attention to those down ballot issues that are on that are on the ballot when you're voting for something. Because I can see, particularly in a state like Florida that Andrew was talking about, where absolutely Ron DeSantis could do something like that. You think about red states like Alabama, Governor Kay Ivey, and already the abysmal decisions that she's made, especially when it comes around criminal justice and prisons. Mississippi with Tate Reeves, like I can't even imagine where this might go. So yes,
states
I think
have
this will cast
already
a dark
started
shadow
rolling
over
back
everything.
that. Tiffany, to your point, states have already, in this legislative session, have already preempted the court by laying down law in the states that are shredding doctrines around ethics, around being able to be prosecuted for what they do in their offices. So this is a step to Angela. Now that I understand your question better, the court said that in the executive branch is the president of the United States singularly. That the Congress has 535 members. The court has 9 members, and thousands of judges underneath it. But in this case, what makes him so exceptional is that he alone is the executive branch. So as it relates to extending immunity to officers, people who work with under him, cabinet members, so on and so forth, that's off the table. But what isn't off the table is that the president can direct them to take an action, and he can then immediately pardon them. Pardon them from any future prosecution.
Or anyone he deputizes, which some of that is enshrined in the Constitution, which is absolute immunity. And any other official act, again, is that presumed immunity. I know we're over time to take a break. So we hit this break, and I do want to make sure we hear a question. We have a great question from the audience.
I was going to say,
being at the top. I skipped over that. I was ready to jump in. I'm sorry. I'll listen to this break.
It's all good. But we're going to pay some bills. But when we come back on the other side, we want to bring you into the conversation. And just as a reminder, please remember to keep submitting your videos. We want to make sure that this is a comprehensive conversation that involves our listeners. So on the other side of this break, we're going to hear from one of our favorite viewers, Phoebe. She's got a question. So we'll see you on the other side.
Phoebe Smith, California. Welcome home, y'all. I love saying that. Inspirational, Angela, that you thought about that. I loved the last segment where y'all were talking about the poll question. Hilarious. I was clapping my hands in laughter. So good. And I love how Andrew can keep himself together and sustain himself in a room of women rolling their eyes to the back of their head because they think he's missing the point when he's the one who understands the point, right? Which is we have to value ourselves higher than they value us. And that's what he was standing on. I love that. And he did it with 10 toes. Love it. This is my question, y'all. What are the true basic values of Republicans? And why would any Republican ever think that they are sustaining values that would support and speak to the needs of all community members in America? What were those values and how would they ever possibly serve Black people? Thanks, y'all. Love the show.
But Andrew, she gave you quite a shout out, so you should probably jump in there and answer her question.
Well, I would just, first of all, Phoebe, thank you. And thank you for your support and love for the show. We love you back. Welcome home. You know, the truth is
and I do not be rolling my eyes at my brother.
Oh, no, she be punching me. Nah, but I'm joking. It's all love here. We're siblings. It's all love. But I will say, you know
also,
what?
Also, wait, Andrew, one more fact check. Welcome home, y'all, was you. Welcome home. The whole home idea is you. That is not, I can't claim credit for that. So since you love Andrew so much, Phoebe, it was actually Andrew's welcome home, y'all.
Oh, I thought it just organically came. Like, welcome home, y'all. And it just stuck, right? We're in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I don't know about you, Tiff and Angela. Maybe 20 years ago, I could have given a more cogent response to what Republicans stand for, even if I disagreed. There's just none of that these days. I think from top to bottom, the party right now is composed of sycophants. And it's not just the party. It has now bled its way and deeply ensconced itself in what was supposed to be the justice's blind, right? Aspect of our Constitution, the judiciary. And at the highest levels, this court has been bought, paid for, and delivered by Donald Trump, the thief Mitch McConnell, and all of their Republican culprits in the United States Senate who stole 2 U.S. Supreme Court justice seats and now have seated on this court 6 conservatives against 3 constitutionalists. And I think it's a damn shame. And I think for those of us who have been trepidatious about this upcoming election, I don't think the stakes can be any clearer than what they are right now. Our freedoms, our very democracy is at stake thanks to a court that is on the take, unethical, unconstitutional, creates new law out of whole cloth. Thank you, Ketanji Brown Jackson and Justice Sonia Sotomayor for pointing that out in your dissents this week. I'm aggrieved, and I hope everybody out there feels aggrieved by the fact that no, it wasn't a great debate for Joe Biden the other day. But y'all, one of the men on that stage at least told the truth. The other one for 90 minutes told straight lies. Period. Enough said. And if nothing else motivates us, let the idea that Donald Trump can choose to go after any one of us and prosecute us and never, ever have to answer for why it is that he started a prosecution against us. And some people say, well, you don't lose your constitutional rights. You can still fight it in court. Well, guess what? Try to remake your life after you've been drugged through the damn gutter. Defending yourself against the government of the United States of America, because that's the seal that the man carries by his name when he's president. It is him, the United States government, versus little old us. And there are no limits to this dude when he has unchecked, unfettered, unaccountable power. He's coming for all of us, y'all. So you know what? Joe Biden can be sleepy on some days. He can be lame on some days. He can be sharp and gregarious and outgoing on other days. I'll take him and his administration any day over 1 day, 1 hour, 1 minute, 1 second of Donald Trump and that White House again being able to wreak havoc, not over only our democracy, but over any one of us that he chooses to. The stakes are just that high this week. And petty conversation about little stuff, I don't have time for anymore.
I think the piece about the debate, I don't think it's petty, but I just feels like on both sides, not Donald Trump, both sides, but on both sides, it feels like they're operating in 2 different universes. So we know like with Donald Trump, it's like the end of all democracy. And on Joe Biden's side, like people who say legitimately like, we really ain't got nobody else. Like, I understand the sentiment. And also, we really ain't got nobody else at this point. Like, no candidate is willing to challenge him. But I think one of the things I appreciated earlier, at least in our pre-pro call, Andrew, is you were talking about there are some solutions. There are some things that the people could do to make sure that we don't just stay stuck, Tiff, in our gloom and doom and like just, goddamn America. Yeah. Like we just don't stay there. So what do we do to not stay there, Andrew? You got to bring us home and welcome us home, y'all. We got to figure this out.
I'll share some of those thoughts, but Tiff, I wanted to just throw it back to you, our host for today, whether or not you had other, thoughts to offer just on this idea.
I think, to her question, and I'm kind of stealing this from you, Andrew, because you say this all the time, but we have to stop talking about the Republican Party like it's a separate entity from Donald Trump. There is no Republican Party. There is only the MAGA Party now. And I think it's important to address how we got here because so many people have been given a pass, like Donald Trump just came on the scene and changed everything. That is not true. The devil is a lie. This is the only Republican Party we have ever known. Ronald Reagan, George H. Bush, George H.W. Bush, they may have been more articulate, but and less clumsy in what they said, but their policies were just as damaging.
Dangerous.
And we are still, they rippled through generations and time and destroyed generations of Black and brown folks in this country and poor white people. We've all been impacted by this. And so even the people, the never Trumpers, you'll know a lot of these people voted just like Donald Trump. They just don't like the way he presents himself. So you have to ask them, do you not like him as a person or do you not like his policies? Because the battle we've been fighting has always been on a policy side of things, less so than the politics side of things. So, I don't think the Republicans have values anymore. Their values seem to be whatever Donald Trump's values are. And he recognized that he could tap into a base by saying, hey, you're losing because they're winning. And they look like you and me. And I'm here to tell y'all, we ain't winning. We are still very much in a battle, fighting battles our grandparents fought. So I get a little frustrated with the media trying to sanitize some people. I mean, you see people who worked for the insurrectionists alongside the insurrectionists taking up space on cable news panels, writing books, appearing on Dancing with the Stars. Like, it's all good.
Right. They get
and
normalized.
We have to remind the folks that Frankenstein, as my brother Michael Eric Dyson says, Frankenstein was the doctor. He was not the monster. So every single person who was ever a part of this Republican Party, you are the doctor that created this monster. That's and now real. You're being cannibalized.
That's real. And Angela, and to Tiff, to your point around moving forward and what folks can do, particularly around this issue of the courts. One, I just got to underscore, you can't separate the courts from the presidency. The president makes those appointments to the federal judiciary, and those are confirmed or not by the United States Senate. So to the point of the U.S. Senate, the president by himself can't get the kind of sweeping change that we want to see. It matters that we compete for and we work for candidates who we're supportive of in these U.S. Senate contests. And just to give you some information, I think it's 15 of the last 18 appointments to the United States Supreme Court have been Republican appointees. 15 of the last 18 have been Republican presidential appointees that have been confirmed to the high court, even though Democrats, progressive liberals, whatever you want to call it, represent 40 million more residents of the United States in the U.S. Senate. So how do we get here? We have a system that is disproportionately disempowering states that are more diverse, states where Black folks and brown folks are living, paying their taxes without the kind of equitable representation that we deserve and that we need in Washington. And the fallout from that is that they're able to make last stands like what we've seen happen at the Supreme Court and even worse in other decisions because they're unchecked. Mitch McConnell can steal a seat and never have to pay the consequence for what that's like. And so let's presume we get the White House, hold the Senate, and get the House. Democrats, my suggestion, and this has come forth through other people's voices as well, need to enlarge the United States Supreme Court to 13 members. Add 4 new appointments to the Supreme Court that a Democrat, Joe Biden, will appoint, and that a Democratic Senate will confirm and move forward after they abolish the filibuster. And then they ought to incorporate term limits for the United States Supreme Court. That way, a Clarence Thomas and his grift and his take and his lavish vacations and millions of dollars and gifts can't ever get so comfortable on a court without recognizing that he's got to be accountable at the end of the day on the other side of that term. And guess what? Even though they're lifetime appointments, it doesn't say a lifetime appointment to the United States Supreme Court. It is to the court. And so they can spend 18 years on the U.S. Supreme Court and then go into service under a lower federal court and continue for the rest of their lives until their forced retirement or their voluntary retirement or demise. This is
Andrew,
also, yeah.
I was just going to say really quickly, sometimes, as Tiff was saying earlier, and I do think it's important for us to always remember this because we live, eat, and breathe this stuff. We are in the weeds a lot. Like, just to show how practical what you're saying is, 34 of the United States Senate's 100 seats are up for election this election year. On November 5th, 2024, 34 of those seats, 2 of them are special elections, but 34 of those seats are up for grabs. Most of them are Democratic seats.
That's right.
So it's about preserving what is already existing. Hopefully these folks vote in alignment with your values, and also working to fight back against Republican senators who have not represented your best interest and values.
That's right.
Expanding the court is absolutely something Congress can do.
And I just wanted to give some examples of things that can happen as a result of us having voted. Because some folks may throw up their hands and say, all right, the Supreme Court decided, what are we going to do about it? What can a new Democratic president do about it? What can a Democratic Congress do about it? There are a lot of things that can be done about it, but it can't happen unless we sweep this thing, and that requires our full participation in the process. A lot is being said about Joe Biden. Obviously, it's the top of the ticket, but I make these comments out of a plea for folks to see that it's not just the presidency that we got to be concerned about. You can't send a president in there and then handicap them with the left and the right hand tied behind their back because we didn't then vote for the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House. I want to just quickly name check these states, and then I'm off. West Virginia. I don't know who all in West Virginia, but you all have a Senate seat that is now occupied by a Democrat that is likely going to go
allegedly.
Well, anyway, another topic,
well, he's
another
an
day.
Independent. He switched his party.
He is. Yeah. He's an independent, but caucuses with the Democrats, which is how we're still able to hold.
Allegedly.
Well, he may not vote with us all the time, but he does caucus with the Democrats.
Allegedly.
Okay.
That's Joe Manchin. In case
I
y'all
know
are confused.
a lot of y'all are in Maryland. We have the former governor of Maryland who is also running and has made this now a closer contest. Democrats, black folk, period there. We've got to organize to ensure that seat in Maryland, that Senate seat, remains in Democratic hands.
Angela Also Brooks,
the county executive. Which county is it?
PG County.
Prince George's County. Arizona. Current independent holds that seat, retiring. Caucus of the Democrat retiring. That seat is now open. Y'all remember that?
Ruben Gallegos is running, right?
Huh? Gallegos.
Ruben Gallegos.
Yes, but I was trying to think of Carrie Lake, who he is running against. Y'all remember the wild Carrie Lake who just went crazy over Trump? Well, ran for governor the last cycle.
She's also an election denier.
Yeah.
And is running for the U.S. Senate. That is a seat that we have got to compete for. We've got to hold. Michigan, y'all. Debbie Stabenow is out. She's leaving. She's retiring. That seat is an open contest. Michigan is a close state. Pennsylvania. Senator Casey is up for re-election. Bob Casey Jr. In Pennsylvania, another closely contested state. We got to show up there, y'all. Wisconsin. I know we in Wisconsin. Tammy Baldwin, incumbent Democrat, up. Very close race. We need us there. Montana. I don't know who all out there, y'all. But if you out there, we need you to show up. We need you to count. Nevada, not to be confused with Nevada. There is a competitive U.S. Senate seat. Organize, get connected. Plug in there. And then last and certainly not least, Ohio, Sherrod Brown, sitting incumbent. But Ohio is a state that Democrats in the presidential column lost by double digits. We have got to hold that seat for Senator Sherrod Brown, who for some reason, strange reason, is an alien there because he has been able to win re-election even when his state has gone wildly for Donald Trump in the presidential contest. Those are the states that are seemingly most consequential to Democrats. holding on to the U.S. Senate. Y'all, I hope you'll plug in, and we'll plug in our analysis of this episode some sites that you can visit: 365, 538, Cook Political Report. There are a number of others that you can visit and learn which seats in the House as well as in the Senate are competitive that you can plug in to help out.
If I could just say really quickly, right now the House Republicans have a very, very, very slim majority, 219 to Democrats 213, and there are vacancies. So this is one that is possible to flip. It's of course 435 total voting members. If the House flips, it is likely that Hakeem Jeffries would become Speaker. So again, this is all about turnout, and it's about turnout down ballot. We often talk about voting, but we don't always talk about voting in off-year elections. It matters during midterms. It matters during presidentials, and it matters not to just fill in that circle on that top of that ballot. It matters to go all the way down ballot for initiatives in your community, council members, mayors, county commissioners. Andrew was both a county commissioner and he was a mayor. And he should have been governor. I maintain that we'll talk about that on another bitty pod when we're ready. But I think that what we need to understand is there's so much at stake. I'm talking through what should be a break. And so we shall toss to this break.
All right, we got to pay some bills. But on the other side of this break, we're bringing you back into the conversation. We have another viewer question. And this time we're hearing from Briante. So don't go anywhere. We'll see you on the other side.
Hey, good day, Native Land family. Hey, I got a quick question for y'all. My name is Briante. I'm from Texas. I'm in Dallas, Texas, to be specific. But my question for y'all is, last night, we watched Jamal Bowman take an L last night in New York. And it's real frustrating to watch because Jamal Bowman, he represents the best of us. He represents everything that needs to be in D.C. fighting for changes that we want to see. My question is, what is it that we need to be doing as Black people, whether it's contributing our dollars or putting our attention towards? What do we need to be doing to make sure we're protecting representatives or senators or whoever, politicians that are like Jamal Bowman, that are there fighting, so they won't feel alone? So when they do have these challenges, these primary challengers, that they're able to withstand against all the money that's being thrown. Black folks, we have some of the highest spending power in the world, but we don't seem to have a collective situation to when it comes to making sure our dollars come together. So what is it that we can be doing or building to make sure we're getting to that point to where, AIPAC was well funded by Jewish and others? What can we do to get to that point? Appreciate y'all. Thanks for taking the question. Also, little man back there.
Hey.
Thanks, y'all.
Hey. I hope you impart, Deontay.
I love that. The cameo from the baby. I love it. And I love that question. I think it's such a good question because so many people, I think when we present information, sometimes people can feel blanketed. They don't, fully, I know I feel that way. I don't fully grasp, all these acronyms and inside baseball talk. And so you can feel just like, if I'm being asked to care about everything, it's easy to care about nothing. So I really appreciate that question. And I'm stealing this from Angela. When we were in Miami at our first stop on our Native Land tour, and we were talking about being tired. And Angela, you made the point, like, if you're sitting next to someone, like, yeah, we're all tired, but maybe someone else isn't tired in the same way. Maybe you're tired of hearing information. Maybe you're tired of canvassing, whatever that is. So I would say every little bit helps. If everyone does a little, no one has to do a lot. If you have the financial resources, fund a candidate that speaks to your interests, your issues. If you don't have the financial resources, show up. There's always bodies needed. Canvass. You can knock door to door. If you don't have financial resources and you don't have time capacity, learn, be informed, share responsibly. You can post something on social media from a reputable source that you have personally looked at and you understand this information to be true and it's verified. Be sure that you're sharing responsibly. Vote. Obviously, we always say that, but show up on election day and make your voice heard, and not just during presidential election years. And I will be honest, I have challenges too, voting in some of those off-year elections where it might just be a ballot initiative that counts or a special election. But those are all just some basic things that you can do. And I'm sure my co-hosts have thoughts I haven't even thought of.
I just want to plug Collective PAC. as an avenue of concentrating our giving power, multiplying our giving power so that resources can go to progressive Black and brown candidates, or in the case of collective, concentrating on Black candidates who are running, particularly for these higher offices that people never give a shot to, but because they can come in with real resources, our collective resources, it can make a real big difference. So look them up.
Just to clarify for the listeners really quickly, Collective PAC, PAC is a political action committee. Collective PAC is something that's run by a husband and wife couple, Stephanie Brown James and Quentin James, and they raise money for candidates running at the federal level. I'd imagine there are probably similar organizations for people running at the state and local level. And if there isn't something like this that exists at the state and local level in your area, then be that. Start it. Make sure you look up those campaign finance laws. But if you don't see what you need, then create it. Sorry,
and they
Angela,
support at the state level too, by the way. They do.
They do. Thank you for correcting me.
And it's collectivepac.org. I'm sorry, I had to look it up real quick. Collectivepac.org.
And there are some additional PACs as well. Of course, shout out to Quentin and Stephanie. We see you. We love y'all. Thank you for the work that you do every single day. There's also Higher Heights. There's Black PAC, and then the CBC PAC, which, just so you all know, I do sit on that board. I want to just acknowledge some of the other pieces that Briante raised in his question. So one of the things that I heard in Briante's question is something that we didn't get to when we talked about Jamal Bowman last week. Sometimes what we have to note, and I'm so glad that he talked about what Black folks can do with our dollars, how we can support our candidates. We talked about some of those PACs. And I'm thanking him for thrusting us right into the heart of our calls to action for this week. But I was really frustrated by the need for Hillary Clinton to get involved with this primary contest. You will see overwhelmingly a number of PACs, including where there are incumbents involved. The CBC, even when there is a Black primary challenger, will often not get involved when the incumbent is one of their housemates. It's somebody that is one of their colleagues. And so even though Hillary Clinton did not serve with Jamal Bowman, I am hard-pressed to understand why she felt the need to engage in this race when there are the Joe Manchins of the world, when there are the Kyrsten Sinemas of the world. And I have not heard her say anything about challenging them. Or of course, Sinema's out now, but I haven't heard the need for them to push back on these folks. And that rhetoric is one single issue so important for you to undermine history, right? This is a Black member that got the CBC over 50 to 60 members when we are finally seeing equal representation. The same CBC that ensured that you had an opportunity, right? Had a credible run in 2016. So it is beyond me that she would get involved. And I think that my call to action here would be that we always remember that our actions don't always align just because we may align in how we vote or what policy priorities we have based on party. Sometimes our interests collide, and it is okay for us to represent and protect our interests even when they are not aligned with people who we may look up to, with people who we may have supported, with people who we may have endorsed, and with folks we may have even donated to. I also don't think it is unnecessary for us to remind them of where their loyalties should and must lie when we did stand with them when we didn't have to. And I think that will be how we get to the other side of recognizing and harnessing our collective Black political power.
I feel like we've given some calls to action, but it's that time in the show where we give calls to action. So if you guys want to go first and give one, or you feel like you already gave yours?
I know this was a dense.
That was mine. Briante thrusted me into mine. I'm good.
Okay.
A more dense and substantive, pod, and sometimes these things can be heavy, but I trust your intelligence. I don't want to underestimate, based off the questions that you all asked, the way, the various specifics that you already know, you've picked up, you've read, you've looked at, that this isn't too heavy for any one of us to carry our own respective pieces. And so I'll just my ask would be, while it feels like sometimes like we're breathing down a fire hose, please resist the urge to check out, to tune out, to turn the page. In fact, I think oftentimes people in higher office and power and positions of influence, they want you to check out. They want to say this is too hard. They want you to feel like you don't have the brain capacity to take it all in. I know different. I trust different. I believe different. And so I'm never gonna talk down to you. I'm gonna talk at you and with you in conversation in the way that I would anyone else who I believe to be interested in these kinds of subjects. And just thank you for your support of Native Land, and allow us to hopefully bring you, yes, some fun as often as we can, but also as much as we can, the substance.
All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. Before we end the show, I want to let you all know, remind you to please leave a review. Subscribe to Native Land Pod. We're available on all platforms and YouTube. New episodes drop every Thursday. You can also follow us on social media. We are Tiffany Cross, Angela Rye, and Andrew Gillum. Welcome home, y'all.
Welcome
there are
home.
125 days till Election Day.
Thank you for joining the natives. Intentional with the info and all of the latest. Rye, Gillum, and Cross connected to the statements that you leave on our socials. Thank you sincerely for the patience. Reason for your choice is clear. We're so grateful. Took the oath to execute roles. Yeah, faithful. Preserve, defend, and protect the truth, even if painful. Welcome home to all of the natives. We thank you.
Welcome home, y'all.
What's
Welcome
up,
home.
sis?
Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.